Is it me you're looking for? Nope. Actually looking for that. So you can see I did something pretty stupid. It's a LQ4 6-liter iron block in a 2016 Ecoboost Mustang. So when I started this project, it was 8 or 9 months ago. The original plan was to make an LS swap kit for the S550 chassis, mostly targeted towards the Ecoboost guys, just to get them another engine option, because the cars, even in factory form, are so problematic. They're fun cars. Ecoboost is a great engine, but it's really not intended for high horsepower. So you can make 400 wheel horsepower safely on it, and then obviously we offer built short blocks and cylinder heads. But your goals for 600, 700 horsepower out of that engine just aren't realistic. We wanted to do an engine that's easily swappable. There's a ton of resources out there for it, and they're readily available. You can do a Gen 3, save some money, or you can do a Gen 4, a little bit more expensive, which is, in my opinion, the better option is doing the Gen 4. This is obviously a Gen 3, but this was only used for mock-up. It was out of a truck, so it had a huge intake manifold, huge accessories on it. It's got a huge damper on it down there. I wanted to use something massive. That way, if a customer bought just a 5.3 or a 6.0 out of a Silverado, we would know if it would fit. They wouldn't have to change anything. But the intake manifold on the truck engines are a little too tall. It will clear. You can add a couple spacers to the back of the hood to space it out and clear, but it's just cheaper to find LS1 intake manifold if you get a truck engine, or just any car manifold that fits the engine that you purchase. So making a kit isn't completely ruled out yet. We obviously have it mounted up. There's a T56 bolted to this thing you can't see, but front mounts are done, transmission mounts done. We still got to come up with a shifter solution for it. I'm thinking of getting a GTO shifter for it. It's remote mounted because the factory engine, factory transmission has a remote mounted shifter too. So if it was just me doing a project, and just wanting to do the swap and get it going, I would just, hack something up. I'd cut the shifter hole or whatever, but because I said we're not ruling out making a swap kit yet for the S550 chassis, I'm just going to keep moving along and trying to use bolt-on parts to keep this factory, or keep the factory chassis together without cutting, modifying anything, trying to make it as bolt-on as possible. With that said, when we find a header solution, we want to make adapters to connect to the catback we'll be using on this. So we're swapping on a GT catback. That'll give us 2 outlets in the front, should get us pretty close to the headers, whatever we come up with. And then we can either add flanges to the headers and sell them with the adapters already on it, or we can make bolt-on adapters from the header to the catback. Really depends on how much space is there. We're not sure because we don't have anything on. So once that's sorted, the next will be the fuel system. If you're keeping a factory intake manifold on here and factory fuel rails, real simple. There's going to be a 3/8 push lock line on the factory feed, and then there's a 3/8 push lock line on the factory rails. So you make a short 12-inch line that'll hook that up, and then if you use a stock ECU, you'll be able to power the factory pump in this thing. So really simple solution for us. We're going to come up with something a little different. We'll cover that later. And then for the clutch line, the factory line is plastic on the chassis, but there is a very short, small metal line that we're going to just chop the plastic off of, weld an AN fitting to, and then just run an AN line right to the release bearing. So that'll be easy. If we do the kit, we'll just include that line for a T56, and it should be the same for, say you do the 60/60 trans from like a 2010 plus Camaro. So after that, that'll address the exhaust, the clutch line, and the fuel line. We're going to come up with a swap harness that will utilize like the factory fan controls, stuff like that. We'll add plugs and stuff to it. But in our case, we're actually going to be using a standalone system, a Holley Dominator, because we want to do a blower on this thing. So doing a Holley Dominator will get us a nice speed density setup with O2 sensor feedback, ton of data logging options, and some inputs if we want to do some custom feature stuff like launch control or traction control, which for traction control we don't really need it because we're just going to be drifting this thing, but it's always nice to have the options if need be. The big thing for me is just collecting really good data and being able to tune this thing to withstand the abuse we're going to put it through. So that will also give us a nice dash. So for us, we're not going to figure out anything with the factory dash. We're just going to rip it out, replace it with an LCD display from Holley, and then, you know, kind of encase it in there, make it look real nice. But for customers that want to do the swap, you'll have to figure out a dash adapter, you know, get the speed work, the RPM to work and whatnot. It shouldn't be too hard. There's a lot of converters out there. If we do go into production with this, we'll obviously have all the factory parts still, and we'll be able to swap back, and if we need to come up with a solution, we will. But beyond that, the cooling system, we should be able to reuse the factory radiator that's in here. If not, there's a lot of options out there that we can do. It's the way this radiator mounts is really simple, so swapping it to something else, not that hard. So we'll figure it out as we go along. Like I might have mentioned, we're going to do a blower on this. We're going to do an Edelbrock E-Force universal blower. We're not looking for super high horsepower. We're just looking for about 600 wheel and as much torque as possible. You know, like I said, it's a drift car, and we're just going to be blowing the tires off of it. We want to try to have high wheel speed for as much smoke as possible, you know, and needing torque to spin those tires at that speed is obviously needed. So doing a turbo kit would obviously be cheap and easy, but I really like the way this engine actually sits down in the engine bay. Sits really low, and a lot of the weight is behind the front axle. So adding anything in front of it, like a turbocharger and extra piping for the exhaust and downpipe and charge pipe and intercooler and stuff, it's just added work that we really don't need for the goals with this vehicle. So with the engine sitting so far back and low, the D-Force blower sits really low. It's extremely low profile, and it's just gonna look really nice in there, I think. So that is the plan for the power adder and horsepower goals for this thing. The engine that's in here, like I said, is for mock-up. What we're going to be putting in here is actually an aluminum block 6-liter, I believe L77. My buddy Kyle's hooking me up with it. It has a BTR cam, BTR valve springs, and a couple other things as well. So we'll get that engine from him with LS accessories in the front end, damper and everything, so it's nice and compact. And then we're just going to get up and running, and then immediately start on the blower. So we want to get this thing up and running before spring of next year. We obviously have too many projects going on right now to really dedicate, you know, full time to this. So before winter comes, I hope to have it running and driving. You know, I need to get it running at least and iron out any issues with the whole drivability before we just go, you know, balls out and throw a bunch of power at it and stuff. So just makes sense to sort everything out. And then because we're in Minnesota and we have a pretty crazy winter, the car's really not going to be doing anything. It's not going to be driven. So at that point, I'm going to make the decision if we want to move forward with a swap kit or not. We'll be able to pop the mounts out, trans mount out, and then get them jigged up and then replicated. And then from there, you know, we'll come out with the solutions for all the little stuff mentioned. But that'll pretty much do it for the Mustang right now. The next steps are actually going to be getting this engine out, getting it sold. We don't really need this engine once we have, you know, it's already mounted up and everything, so we have no use for it anymore. So this will come out. If you want it, hit me up. You know, I'll put my email in the description. We're in St. Paul, Minnesota, if you want to swing by and pick it up. But it's 80,000 mile LQ4. It's nothing fancy. Sell it to you for cheap. We got ECU, full harness, accessories, pretty much everything for it. So that'll come out in the next couple of weeks. We're going to address the other engine on a stand. We'll go over that, and then we'll drop it in here and then start the exhaust process, the fuel line and the clutch line and everything as well. So like I said, that'll pretty much do it. Expect another update in about 2 to 3 weeks. So next week's video, we're going to be assembling 2 short blocks. This one here is just a stock short block, and then we have one of our built short blocks in the corner that we're just doing a quick refresh on and doing a new head. But this one is just stock short block, going to throw together to go into a car that's getting sold, and then the built one is getting shipped to another customer. So if we have some time next week, after assembling those engines, we'll put the Fiesta back on the lift and start addressing the suspension on this thing. So if you didn't see in the previous video, go back and watch. This thing was in an accident whole new front end, a lot of new parts on it, and then we're going to be doing a build on it. So engine should be done for this in a couple of weeks here. I would say longest about a month. So we want to get this thing up and running on the road, title registered, and then start hitting the dyno with the new turbo setup on it. So if we have time, you'll see this one in the next video.
I like the chase, the sweet aftertaste, but I'm wasting away in your cage. You give me just another superficial step, but I'm